Namaste. One of the deepest, undiscussed, and ununderstood concepts in psychoanalysis is the hydraulic model. Our journey today is into esoteric world of this concept with our guide, psychoanalysis consultant, Mr. Himanshu Vaidya. Namaste, sir.
Namaste.
So we would like to start our today's episode with the question, what is this called the hydraulic model in psychoanalysis?
Hydraulic model is the language of old veterans in psychoanalysis. Psychoanalytic literature till 2000, if you look into it, you will find use of two phrases, hydraulic model and the economic model, and both mean the same thing. Meaning is that, like in economics, capital accumulates and capital is released in spending, or in some other way it is released out. Similarly, we have this affect economy. That affect builds up, leading to a pathology, and affect is released, leading to resolution of the pathology. And this almost looks like a hydraulic system. That water accumulates, pressure builds up, and then you release the water, the pressure goes up. And therefore, this model where accumulation of affect was seen as causing pathology and release of affect was seen as resolution of the problem is called the hydraulic model. The hydraulic model is so common to such a variety of psychotherapy schools that one way to classify all psychotherapy schools is into those which follow hydraulic model and those that don't follow hydraulic. Hydraulic model started with Freud. Freud believed that at the root of the pathology are two things. In the unconscious mind, there are two things which are hidden. An unconscious thought related to affect. So there is an unconscious thought and an unconscious affect, and both are related to each other, forming what is called a complex. So there is an entity called a complex in the unconscious mind with idea and affect. And if the idea becomes conscious, you get partial relief, say 10 to 15%. If the affect is released in catharsis, you get the major relief and the healing of the pathology. And this happened very dramatically in cases of OCD. That it happened at times with Freud. How did Freud come to the hydraulic model? He came to it in this way. It happened many times in OCD that the Oedipal idea became conscious, but the affect was not released.
Right.
So what happened was, one obsession was overcome and after some interval substituted by another obsession. So Freud realized that it is not the idea becoming conscious, but the release of affect which is primary. So it became a 75-25 situation. That 75% of relief was based upon release of affect, and hardly 20 to 25% was based upon intellectual understanding or the idea becoming conscious. So Freud continued with this hydraulic model for quite a long time, almost all of his life. After Freud, Jung took a slightly different route. Jung was not opposed to Freud. Jung also accepted the concept of complex. He also accepted the concept of affect and idea both being unconscious and their release becoming significant for healing. But Jung introduced an idea of individuation. That if individuation is not frustrated, pathology will not be as severe. So as you move towards understanding of your real authentic self and aligning your life towards your goals of individuation, the healing also proceeds, which means healing happens not only by the unconscious idea becoming conscious, not only by release of affect, but also by a movement towards individuation. So this idea of individuation also being reason for pathology, one of the reasons, and also one of the reasons of healing, was a non-hydraulic idea. At the same time, Adler came in with the idea of inferiority and managing that inferiority, overcoming out of inferiority as the cause and the way of healing. So for Adler, inferiority was at the root of problems, and overcoming the inferiority through whatever means you can, behavioral, thought, affective, whatever way you can, would lead to healing, which was also a non-hydraulic idea. Then Klein came in, and Klein said internalization of a good, reliable, stable object is at the root of good mental health and also one of the core things for healing. That in therapy, many things happen, and one of the things that happens is this: the patient internalizes the therapist as a good, reliable, stable object. Now, this being at the core of health and at the core of healing also is a non-hydraulic idea.
Right.
Then came Beyond, and Beyond talked about converting beta elements into alpha and then processing the alpha, both in waking thoughts as well as in dreams. And this idea that partial processing or not processing of certain material in the unconscious mind can also contribute to pathology, it's a processing idea. So the bringing in of processing into pathology and healing also is a non-hydraulic idea. Winnicott came in with, Klein was 50-50. Klein was, I should say 75-25. Klein did not dispense completely with the hydraulic model. But if you look at our concepts of internalization, of envy, of bridging the split, they are concepts which are non-hydraulic in nature. Then comes the point of Winnicott, who talked about relation between the early child and the mother in early stage of one's life, which also can be interpreted as a non-hydraulic idea. Then comes Kohut, who talked about creation of a healthy self, which again brings in a non-hydraulic idea. Lacan talked about the providing signifier to something unconscious or releasing the real into the symbolic, the imaginary into the symbolic as the core of healing, which also is a non-hydraulic idea. And then we have ISTDP, which is a 100% hydraulic model. So we see this complete circle from Freud to ISTDP. Hydraulic, non-hydraulic, again hydraulic. And this is very important to understand that in the history of psychotherapy, we had both categories, the hydraulic schools and the non-hydraulic schools. And it's not necessary to believe that there is only one way to healing.
So that means, can we divide the schools of psychotherapy into hydraulic and non-hydraulic schools?
Yeah, we can. Not only within psychoanalysis, even outside. For example, if you look at hydraulic schools, that category, the Freudian school, ISTDP, EDT, experiential dynamic therapy, ECT, emotion-centered therapy, some meditations of OSHO like AUM, awareness, understanding, and meditation. These are all hydraulic model-based approaches. So it's not only that Freud was hydraulic or ISTDP is hydraulic. There are many meditative systems in the East which are equally hydraulic. And if you look at non-hydraulic, you see Kohut, you see Winnicott, we see Lacan, we see Adler, we see cognitive therapies, we see cognitive behavioral therapies, REBT, BT, logotherapy. These are all non-hydraulic therapies. Now there are some hybrids. For example, if you look at hypnotherapy,
Right.
Hypnotherapy would be a hybrid because it started off being a hydraulic therapy.
Hydraulic therapy.
That to take person into trance and release affect. But part of it also was to give suggestion, which was cognitive in nature, commands. And later on, it incorporated a lot of tools from cognitive behavioral therapy.
Right.
And logotherapy. So this becomes a kind of a hybrid. It's partly hydraulic, partly non-hydraulic. If you look at psychodrama, psychodrama also becomes largely hydraulic. But one part where psychodrama is not hydraulic is in internalization and concretization of something in front of us, which becomes a cognitive input or an internalization input or a process input. So that also becomes a hybrid of hydraulic and non-hydraulic, but largely hydraulic. It's majority hydraulic, minority non-hydraulic. Very interesting point here is of beyond. If we classify Beyond's work into two, early Beyond and late Beyond, then early Beyond was like Klein, a combination of hydraulic and non-hydraulic, but largely non-hydraulic. It's almost like 75-25. 75% non-hydraulic and 25% hydraulic. But the later Beyond completely goes into healing by ineffable O and goes almost completely non-hydraulic. So this is the way we can look at it, how you can divide the psychotherapy schools into hydraulic and non-hydraulic, and many of them are combinations.
So does it open up a deeper space in realm of psychoanalysis?
It does, because it leads us to the fundamental question, what is healing and how does healing work? And we have a separate discussion on the channel, how healing happens. And there I have put out almost 15 to 25 different reasons of how healing happens. That does the hydraulic model work? Yes, it does. Does the non-hydraulic model work? Yes, it does. So does release of affect heal? Yes, it does. Does internalization of a good, reliable, stable object heal? Yes, it does. Does individuation help? Yes. Does logotherapy approach, which marshals the superego strength and superego happiness, does it help? Does it heal? Yes, it does. Now, does attachment heal? Of course it does. So what heals becomes a question. So what then we are left with is this: do cognitive interventions heal? Yes. Does the hydraulic model heal? Yes. Does internalization of a good, reliable, stable object heal? Yes. Does formation of a healthy self heal? Yes. Does living it out heal? Yes. Does approval and validation heal? Yes. Does the ineffable O of beyond heal? Yes. Does emptying out of real and imaginary into the symbolic heal? Of course it does. Now, this is where it leads us to a pluralism.
Right.
That variety of things heal, and it takes us to a deeper area of psychoanalysis. At the root, how does pathology come about, and how does it get healed. And we are here at two junctions, because the same pathology can happen from a variety of directions and end up there. And from the same junction, you can take a variety of routes out. So these two fundamental questions actually are junctions. How does pathology happen and how does healing happen? And here we come into the pluralism of school. And the contest of various opinions will stay till we create a more elemental and comprehensive model of the mind, model of pathology and model of healing. Till then, we will have to be in an integrative mode and look at both the hydraulic ways of healing and the non-hydraulic ways of.
So when you started with the discussion right from Freud, you moved on to Klein, Beyond, Lacan, all of those psychoanalysts and different other schools also. What holds then for future in this context?
There will be integration within hydraulic schools. There will be integration within non-hydraulic schools. There will be addition in the hydraulic schools. There will be addition in the non-hydraulic schools. And there will be integration across the two groups. And the goal of the next 25 years is to create a grid where we talk about the personality, pathology, intensity, and the pathy. That if a person has a personality X, pathy.
Can you repeat?
Pathy, the mode of healing. Pathy, Pathy. So it's like if a person has personality X, problem Y, with intensity Z, then for this situation, which is the best therapy to be applied? And is it that we require multiple therapies, that we start with this for 3 months and then do 2 months of this and do 3 months of this, or we do only one? Do we combo therapy with allopathic drugs or homeopathic drugs or Ayurvedic drugs or Reiki or pranic healing? How do you create this basket of healing customized for that person? Now, at present, we are moving by with experience, that each holistic healer, based upon his knowledge and experience, creates this basket. The next 25 years, the real work is to prove with research how this ought to be done. So this is how the situation will be moving forward.
So mostly whatever we have listed in the discussion so far, it's all about the Western schools. Talking about the Eastern schools, does hydraulic model have any parallel in Hindu psychology?
Very much so. Like in the West, we have hydraulic schools and non-hydraulic schools in the Hindu psychology. If you look at Reiki, pranic healing, crystal healing, acupressure, acupuncture, Tai Chi, all of these are hydraulic model based schools. That the prana has got blocked up and we have to release it. Now the difference would be, what is the nature of thing that is blocked up? What is prana? But largely we can say it is almost the same as the affect, because in the East also, in the West also, Freud's libido, which was the affective component of Freud's theory, was slightly different from Jung's life energy. Freud's libido was, it was like a colored water which was then taking other colors. That it had an original color which was erotic in nature. And then it was taking color of other affects like anger, shame, guilt. But primarily it was libido. For Jung, primarily it was colorless, life energy. And then this life energy can take various colors. It's like you have a bucket of water and then you put one drop, it becomes something. Or let us say you have a bucket of water, out of that you take out one glass. And in one glass you put one drop of erotica, it becomes erotic energy. You take out another glass, you put guilt, it becomes affect full of guilt. So for Jung, the original energy was colorless, life energy. And it was taking various forms based upon the events which were happening in the psyche. Whereas for Freud, the original energy was not colorless, it was colored in the sense of being libido. So it was erotic energy to start with. In East, it is more of Jungian idea that the original energy, life energy, is colorless. And as the energy moves into every chakra, based upon what is active in the chakra, that flavor, that drop of color falls into the life energy, and that one glass of life energy out of the full bucket becomes of a particular type. So if, let us say, there is a bucket of energy moving in the body, and one glass goes to the heart chakra, and you drop one pink colored drop, it becomes love. It goes to the Muladhara chakra and you drop one red drop, it becomes power. It goes to the Agnya chakra and you drop one drop of indigo color, it becomes knowledge. So the original energy is that. So if we go by this in the Reiki, pranic healing, all these energy healing schools, they're essentially based upon hydraulic model. The difference will be what is it they call the fundamental energy and what are the characteristics of it. But that is more a dispute in terms of the nature of elementals rather than the process, which is definitely hydraulic. So the process of pathology generation and the process of healing is definitely Tantra in the East is both hydraulic and non-hydraulic, but largely hydraulic. Because in Tantra, you get into a relationship with the deity. So first you create the idol, then there is a personality creation, and then there is a relationship in which those stages happen of Tadrupta, Tanmayata, and Lay. And in that relationship with the deity, all the pent-up emotions are catharted out. So no repressed emotions remain later on. So it is largely hydraulic, but it also gets into certain non-hydraulic parts, because one of the outcomes of that relationship also is internalization of that deity. So there is also internalization of the good, reliable, stable object and omnipotent object. So that also is there. But so it's, Tantra is a mix, but largely hydraulic. You can call it kind of a 70-30. 70% hydraulic and 30% non-hydraulic. Idol worship, which is a very common practice in the East, it is both hydraulic and non-hydraulic. It is internalization. It's also catharsis. Mantra using is largely non-hydraulic. But some people say it's also hydraulic because it releases the pent-up affect. So it looks like a cognitive tool to release affect. But in certain cases, mantra is used to accomplish something in the outer world, which is not hydraulic at all. So mantra can be both hydraulic and non-hydraulic. But if you look at the usage is more non-hydraulic than hydraulic.
Still, I'm confused there because to my understanding till date and experience, mantra is something, the cycle is the reverse one, like you're bringing things inwards. How it is hydraulic, bringing it outwards?
Take two mantras. Mantra M1 is recited to get money from the outside world. So it would be non-hydraulic in nature. You're not working on the emotions inside of you.
Right.
Take a second mantra that somebody is suffering from depression because of locked up anger. Somebody gives him a mantra and let us say it works. So when mantras are used to purify the chakras,
okay,
those mantras, they purify the chakras by releasing the difficult blocked up affect, where they are used for a hydraulic function.
Perfect.
It's almost like cognition, that some of the cognitive interventions also result in catharsis. Let's say, for example, you are angry towards X because he did Y, but then you realize somebody tells you he did not do Y, he did Z, somebody else did Y. Now suddenly the anger towards him collapses.
Yes.
So cognition can also be used to release affect. Similarly, pranic healing, Reiki healing tools, crystal healing tools can also be used to release affect. And similarly, we can have mantra also to release affect. So the mantric therapy can be both hydraulic or non-hydraulic. If you look at Bhakti Marga, it's largely hydraulic. Internalization also happens, but largely hydraulic. One important element here is generation of affect per se need not be hydraulic. Hydraulic means that the generated affect is pent up. In Bhakti Marga, let us say you generate new affect and release it at the same time. It's not blocked up anywhere. It's not getting into that hydraulic classical phenomenon. Generation of affect per se is not necessarily hydraulic. And the release of affect did not be always by pressure to release affect. It can also come from a variety of tools, including cognitive tools. So this is how you can look at each the same situation, hydraulic models, non-hydraulic models, and combinations.
Amazing and very interesting. And being a psychoanalysis expert, what is your take on this concept of hydraulic model?
If you look at the two trinities in psychotherapy, the first is we say that mind is an arena where three elementals operate: thought, affect, and behavior. And all of psychotherapy essentially is revolving around these three. If you go into the systemic part where these three are taking place, you call it a biopsychosocial model. That there is a biological genetic system, there is the family system, the psycho part, and the socio system, the larger environment outside. And in this matrix, inside the mind, the thought, affect, and behavior is happening. And hydraulic and non-hydraulic, both processes are happening. So it is not an or situation, but an and situation. And we have to use both hydraulic and non-hydraulic tools. But if you look at the relative significance, it would be, in my view, 75-25. 75% of the work is hydraulic, 25% is non-hydraulic. But with the caveat that non-hydraulic tools, the classically assumed to be non-hydraulic tools, can be very effective to achieve hydraulic results. Like internalization of a good, reliable, stable object can prevent new negative effect from generating. Creation of a strong, healthy self can prevent disintegration and the mounting of anxiety because of disintegration. Marshalling the strength and the happiness of superego by giving oneself an elevated goal, ideal goal, can be used to enhance ego strength and thereby get more strength in one's defenses. Getting into spiritual sadhana with a clear objective of self-transformation itself creates self-acceptance to be very easy. Itself enhances the superego strength. So, tools which are used to achieve hydraulic results often come from non-hydraulic tools. And when we look at the hydraulic model, we have to keep in mind three states of the hydraulic model. First, affect generation. Stage 1. Stage 2, regulation. And stage 3, symptom formation. That first, in the hydraulic model, affect is generated. Now, how is affect generated? Can we go into details of stage 1? Say X amount of affect is generated. Then what happens to X? Some part of X will be expressed, some part of it will be repressed, some part of it will be sublimated. So it is called regulation. So the generated affect has to be regulated in some way, partly by expressing, partly by defensive action. And partly it will be repressed. Now, when the regulatory function fails, then the excess affect, which can neither be expressed nor regulated, that goes into symptom formation. So in the heat model, I have gone in details of all the 3 stages. That what are the variables involved in affect generation? What are the variables in affect regulation and in symptom formation? And when we go that elemental, we have a very cognitive understanding which we can use to use both the hydraulic and non-hydraulic tools to bear upon the stage of affect generation. Because if affect generation itself is controlled, subsequent problems will not happen. Second is strengthening the ego. If the defenses are controlled or strengthened, then regulation becomes very strong. So the excess pathological effect will not be there. Symptom formation will not be there. And if the symptom formation has happened, then of course you have to go through the whole therapy process. So I would say it is 75% of our focus can be on the hydraulic, 25% on non-hydraulic, but within 75%, use all the non-hydraulic tools also along with the hydraulic tools. And non-hydraulic tools essentially for managing not only this cathexis catharsis phenomena, but there are 2 important elements. One, internalization of certain things will cease certain generation of negative effects. 2, creation of a strong self will enable regulation of affect. And some of the cognitive interventions or psychoanalytic interpretations, they sort of are like what I would say a reverse cathexis. And it's a very different phenomena from catharsis. This phenomena has not been talked about in psychoanalysis, that there is something called a reverse cathexis. Okay. Sometimes you will see that you are very clear that affect is blocked up, catharsis has not happened, and yet the person is healed. That is because reverse cathexis has happened, and some of the interpretations, some of the insights, some deep realizations can actually reverse the cathexis. And there is a sort of a eroding of unrolling back and dissolving of the affect. A liquefaction of affect can also happen. Now, these are the things we have not actually gone deep into, but they do happen and very important and very powerful. On the whole, I think, like everything else, Freud started it, this hydraulic model, and that is his eternal contribution that even today when we talk about hydraulic, non-hydraulic and holistic way of healing, which combines both hydraulic and non-hydraulic, it all stands on what Freud started.
Thank you so much for this wonderful episode of ours. Esoteric, enriching, and rare, a priceless discussion. Thank you, sir. Thank you, viewers. Do write to us and see you all again. Namaste.
Namaste.